It was just after midnight when the call came in. Inside the emergency communications center, operators sat at glowing computer screens responding to calls across the city. Most followed familiar patterns: medical emergencies, disturbances, accidents. But sometimes a call seems ordinary until investigators later realize it was anything but. At 12:14 a.m., a woman dialed 911. When the line connected, a quiet, uneasy voice answered. She sounded nervous, speaking quickly as if she were afraid someone might hear her. She told the operator that something strange was happening outside her apartment and that she thought someone had been watching her. The operator asked for the address of the emergency. The woman began to answer, but there was a pause and a brief moment of confusion. Then the call ended abruptly. With no clear indication of danger, the operator assumed the call had been accidental. It lasted only seconds and was logged as an incomplete call. At the time, nothing about it seemed urgent, but hours later, that call would take on a very different meaning. The woman who made it would disappear. And when investigators listened to the recording again, they realized the call may have been her final attempt to ask for help. The caller was 26-year-old Emily Carter. Friends and co-workers describe her as energetic, kind, and deeply devoted to animals. She worked as a veterinary assistant at a small clinic just outside the city. She often stayed late helping frightened pets recover from procedures and volunteered to care for abandoned animals when the clinic needed help. Emily lived alone in a modest third-floor apartment in a quiet complex near the edge of town. The area was usually peaceful, surrounded by trees and walking trails. She had moved there less than a year earlier to be closer to work. In the weeks before the call, however, Emily had told friends she sometimes felt uneasy. She mentioned noticing a car she didn't recognize parked nearby late at night and hearing footsteps outside her door. Nothing clearly threatening, but enough to make her double-check the locks before going to bed. On the evening before she disappeared, Emily finished work around 8:30 p.m. She stopped at a grocery store on her way home and arrived at her apartment shortly after 9. Phone records later showed she spent the evening texting a coworker and watching television. Just before midnight, she sent her mother a simple message saying goodnight. Then, sometime after midnight, she picked up her phone and called 911. The call lasted only 23 seconds. At first, it didn't draw attention. But when Emily failed to answer calls the next day, her family became worried. By evening, they contacted police. Officers who went to her apartment noticed her car still parked outside. Inside, everything appeared normal. Her wallet on the counter, groceries in the kitchen, but Emily was gone. There were no signs of a struggle and no forced entry. Investigators began reviewing phone records and discovered the brief 911 call. When detectives listened to it carefully, they noticed something unusual. Emily's voice sounded tense as she said she thought someone was outside. When the operator asked for her address, her voice dropped lower. She began to say, "I think he's still," before the line went silent. Audio specialists later enhanced the recording and discovered a faint metallic sound just before the call ended, similar to a door handle turning. Detectives returned to the apartment complex to interview neighbors. One resident recalled hearing footsteps running down the stairs around midnight. Another remembered hearing a car engine start suddenly. Surveillance cameras from a nearby gas station captured a dark sedan, leaving the area minutes later, though the license plate could not be read. Inside Emily's apartment, investigators found that the chain lock on her door had been bent, as if someone had forced it while the door was partially open. The discovery suggested Emily may have opened the door slightly before realizing the person outside posed a threat. As the investigation continued, police uncovered another important detail. 2 weeks earlier, Emily had reported that someone appeared to be following her car after work. At the time, there had been little evidence to investigate, but detectives soon learned she had also been receiving messages from anonymous accounts referencing places she had recently visited. Someone seemed to be watching her. When forensic audio experts examined the 911 recording again, they discovered something even more unsettling. Beneath Emily's voice was a faint whisper from another person. After multiple enhancements, investigators believed they could hear a man quietly saying her name. That discovery shifted the investigation. Detectives began reviewing people from Emily's past, including a man she had briefly dated months earlier named Daniel Reeves. Friends said the relationship ended after Daniel became possessive and began showing up unexpectedly near her workplace. Emily had blocked his messages and hoped he would stop contacting her. Investigators discovered Daniel owned a dark sedan similar to the one seen leaving the area that night. Cell tower data also placed his phone near Emily's apartment shortly before the 911 call. When police searched his vehicle, they found gloves and a small crowbar. Forensic testing suggested the metal tool could have caused the damage found on Emily's door chain. Daniel denied involvement, claiming he had only driven through the area. But digital evidence revealed that his phone had connected briefly to the apartment complex's Wi-Fi network just minutes before Emily placed a call. Prosecutors eventually charged him with kidnapping and murder. During the trial, the short 911 recording became the central piece of evidence. Jurors listened to it repeatedly as investigators explained the timeline and the forensic analysis of the background sounds. The prosecution argued that Emily realized Daniel was outside and called for help, but before she could explain the situation, he forced his way inside. After weeks of testimony, the jury found Daniel Reeves guilty. Although Emily's body was never recovered, investigators believe the events unfolded within minutes after the call ended. For Emily's family, the case remains deeply painful, but the conviction brought some measured justice. The brief call that once seemed insignificant ultimately helped investigators uncover what happened. Today, cases like this are often used in emergency dispatch training to remind operators that even incomplete calls can contain vital clues. Sometimes a few seconds of audio, a pause, a whisper, or a small sound in the background can reveal the truth of what happened. On that quiet night, a frightened woman reached out for help, and hidden within those final seconds of the call that ended too soon were the clues investigators needed to understand the crime.